what inspired you to get into acting?
What matters is the story and how you craft it.
You've answered a lot of the questions already with that one answer, so that's fine.
I think a lot of times people go to film school and like, oh, I didn't learn how to do this. I didn't know how to make a resume, or I didn't know how to raise money. And it's like, part of what film school and art school is about is like finding your voice, finding a way to understand the craft. I mean, it's all the things that you sort of need to know before you can actually start even remotely coming close to doing it.
He's been doing the exact same thing for weeks, carrying her ashes everywhere with him like a freaking weirdo.
I've been seeing her, Laura. She's gone, man.
We've got to do what we need to do to put her to rest and move on.
What?
I want to report a stolen car. Rochambeau. From the scatter you were, we were the happiest. Chicago's the answer. Am I dreaming?
You're not dreaming. Mia's dead.
I guess I'm not really sure what I'm doing. Sir? Look! Where's Des Moines?
This way. I'm lost. Or my ashes are anyway, and my whole family wants you arrested.
I'm sorry about that too, right now.
I can't do anything with sorry. Action, Ted!
I'm just gonna... Yeah, I know you've come a long way. Don't do it.
It was never about tombs or gods or monuments. Happiness for us wasn't complicated.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you.
Hi there, welcome to Film Forums. My name is Aisha Jbailing and I have a special guest with me today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jack Newell. I'm the producer, writer, director of Monuments.
Can you tell us a little bit about Monuments?
Okay, so it's a road trip movie about a guy named Ted, played by David Sullivan, whose wife, Laura Marguerite Moreau, she passes away, and he goes on a journey to scatter her ashes at a museum. And he's chosen this museum because that's where he believes, or he remembers, that's where they were happiest, and that's where they fell in love. And so to try to honor her legacy, or to honor who she was, he goes on a trip to do that, to scatter her ashes there. And I'm not going to tell you anything more because of the movie.
No spoilers, we want people to watch the film. But yeah, so it's obviously quite an emotional journey. What was your inspiration? Where do you pull inspiration from when you are putting together a film?
So for this one, there's a lot of different places that we're pulling from. And so the core of it is, when I was younger, high school and college, my mom and my brother both passed away sort of suddenly. Not suddenly, it was cancer, but it was unexpected. And that obviously goes without saying, just awful, terrible, didn't deal with it well, life-defining sort of moment for me. And then when I was just about to get married, my mother-in-law, or soon-to-be mother-in-law, Mary Ann, said, "Hey, I wrote this short story. Would you like to read it?" Because she knew I'd made films, and I did. And it was about a husband-wife, and the wife passes away, and she's like, "Can you scatter me at the museum?" And I read it, and I was like, I think that there's enough story here that would allow me to use it, because it has a beginning, middle, and end. And now I can sort of find a way to deal with all the stuff I've not been dealing with, or I have been dealing with, or for Monuments to take the things that I've observed or experienced of dealing with grief and use this as a way to sort of explore those things. And what that turned into was a story that is not simple, and I would say it's tonally promiscuous, because in my experience, grief is not just simply dark or sad. It can be fun or funny and absurd and beautiful and all of these things. And so trying to make a film that encapsulates that experience. And so that is where the script came from. And then when it got into actually making, where do we pull inspiration from? The first step is from other films that we liked, that me and my DP, Stephanie, and my production designer, Matt, we would watch films together and talk about, oh, what are they doing here? What do we like about that? We looked at a lot of art and photography and just everything. I mean, Matt had like 6,000 photos in a Dropbox, and we would just get together on Saturdays and just go through, every single photo and just be like, no, yes, what do you like about it? And we just sort of would just go through that to build the sort of language. And then, to be incredibly comprehensive with my answer, once you sort of start to cast the film and you bring in all the rest of the crew part, then it becomes a conversation and a collaboration. And I think part of what a film like this is, every film is sort of like this, but for like a film where I'm the writer director, and for a film that's dealing with the issues it's dealing with, a lot of what you're doing is you're inviting people to say, like, come with me and tell this story and use it as a way. And so, you know, when I was working with David or Marguerite or Javier or any of the other cast members, it's like, have you dealt with grief? How do you deal with it? Does this feel true to you? What would you do? You know, all of that stuff. And that's sort of, and then your job as director is to make sure that it's still the story you wanted to tell back when you wrote it a million years ago.
Talking of which, I have like a follow-up question to that, I guess. How long did it take you to actually write the script? And what was your system? How did you go about it?
Well, I'm a bit of a weird writer because I don't really self-identify as a writer. I think on this one, obviously I wrote it. The first draft was, and this is pretty common for me now that I've known, because I've done some more writing since then, but it came out in like a week and a half. So that's incredibly fast, like a whole draft, but it was only 70 pages. But it was like, there's something here. And then I started on, so it took a week and a half, and someone would be like, wow, that's amazing. And then like, it took like 9 to, I think maybe 13 months of just like, part of it's just putting it away and not thinking about it because you need some distance. And then also it's like just getting people involved, and, you know, Angie, my producer, giving me notes, and my wife giving me notes, and doing table reads, and then sort of building out, adding pages, and, you know, more backstory, all that other stuff. And so it's very iterative, and it's very intuitive too. So it's not a firm process, but more like, here's a story I need to tell, and then you just sort of start pushing it through the process of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes perfect sense. In terms of your core team, you know, like you spoke about your producer and your DOP and things like that, how did you go about finding those people, or were they people that you were already connected with?
So Stephanie, who's the director of photography, and I had shot 2 or 3 films before then. I can't remember how many. So we'd worked together before, and we have a really good working relationship. It's actually the same is true for Matt Hyland, who's the production designer. And so when I was starting to make the film, I was like, these are going to be the people. Angie and I had not had a chance to work together before. We have since then, but we had known each other, and we were like, we'd like to collaborate. And I was getting to a spot where I couldn't, because I've produced some of my own work before, but I was like, I want a producer whose job is to produce the movie. And so that was that. And everyone else in the film, David, who was the editor, had cut 42 grams, which was the documentary I had made. And the composer I had worked with on 42 grams as well. So I think a lot of the filmmaking is about finding that team and building that team and going on that journey together, and building that like sort of shorthand.
Absolutely. And in terms of the $1 million question that every filmmaker wants to know, how did you get the money together? How did you pull all of the funding together? Or was that more your producer's area?
Definitely more in the producer's role, for sure. I mean, for a film like this, when you don't have like a studio or a Netflix or Apple Plus or whoever backing you, like, you just got to go out and talk to everyone you know, and try to cobble it together. And you know, it sounds really simple. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I mean, it's incredibly hard, and it's really just a parade of no's forever. And then you get someone who who sees what you're trying to do and is excited about it too. And you have found a real partner. Or in this case of this film, we had a couple of folks who were like, this sounds cool. This sounds exciting. I want to do this with you. And then that's sort of how we got to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what a lot of young filmmakers find particularly daunting is just, you know, where to start, you know, like, you know, who to approach and how to put a pitch together, for example, because how you pitch to your friends and family will be completely different from how you pitch to, you know, someone who has maybe a lot more money to back, you know what I mean, and has more of a corporate interest in the film. What would you say are some of the differences in terms of how you approach different groups of people, or, you know, if you have any advice on that?
Well, it's actually hard if you're talking to friends or family, because you know and love them and they know and love you, and that can be challenging. I think a lot of times creatives, artists, people like me, or the folks who are reading this article or watching this video or whatever, they really sell themselves incredibly short. And I think that they look at raising money like you're in Oliver Twist or whatever, and you're like, please, can I have some more? And it's like, no. Like, you got to change the paradigm. Like, you are an artist and you have a story to tell. You know, just because you don't have financial resources doesn't mean, or just because you don't even have like a proper job doing whatever people say you're supposed to do, doesn't mean that, who cares? I mean, like, your job as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, is to make films, to tell stories. Like, we need you. And I don't think people really think about that. I think they see it as, because we live in a capitalist society, that without money, I don't have value. Or if I'm not a successful filmmaker, I don't have value. And it's like, that's just wrong. I don't know how else to put it. And I might be speaking from a position of privilege in this, but I think that if I had to give someone advice, it would be, have a little bit more confidence in yourself, and that what you're doing is not just something you want to do, which is cool, but also like it serves a greater good. And if you're having conversations with people who like can invest in movies, they got enough money, like they're doing okay. Like, they want to get excited about a vision. They want to invest in a person, you know, who has a vision, and help you make this, because then they can be like, I helped make this movie. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm a person who has resources, and this is how I can participate in the arts. Like, that is something that's really valuable. There's people out there who want to desperately be a part of the arts, but I don't know how to write. I don't know how to filmmake. I've tried to write, but I can't, you know, and then they meet someone who's like got a story and they want to make, and that's a match made in heaven. And I think that would be something I would say for folks to keep in mind, to try, like, I guess I'm giving people I haven't met a pep talk, but like, you know.
No, that's absolutely what this is about, really. It's, you know, a lot of the time, you know, we don't have access to people like yourself who have done it. You know what I mean? You've gotten distribution, you're already there, you know what I mean? So you're exactly the type of person that we need to talk to. And obviously not everyone can be in your inbox or in your Zoom screen like I can, so I can ask the questions for them. In terms of your cast, obviously you had a really good cast that managed to bring your story to life. How involved were you in the casting process, and how did you pull those people together?
Yeah, so we had an amazing casting director. Her name's Brittany Ward, and she's based in Chicago. And so she, you know, is integral to that. The way that casting works for a film like this, at this size, is, you know, you get your casting director on board, you start having creative conversations, and then you just start generating like huge lists of people that you're like, what about these people? And then it's like a conversation that you start internally, like, how would we feel about this? And then the first question that any agent's going to ask, or anyone's going to ask, is basically just like, when are you shooting? And that sounds really weird. And a lot of people who are in the indie space want to be like, well, I'll shoot whenever this actor's ready. And it's like, that's just not how it works. Unless you're like best friends with that person and you know that, and you can be like, hey, are you free? And they're like, yes, I am, you know, like, and so you might have your heart set on like, you know, these people, but if they're not available when you're shooting, then they're not in your movie. It's pretty simple. And I think one thing that's interesting is that like that's the way that a lot of movies are made. And so it's like, sometimes it's like, why is this person in this movie? And it's like, part of the reason is that they were available. And so, which is weird, and that's not very exciting, and that's not what Hollywood wants to sell you, and that's not really what I want to sell. I'm just saying this because this you know, students or young filmmakers, but like, that is one thing. And I think a lot of times young filmmakers get caught up on that thing where it's like, well, I want this person, but I can't find out if they're available, and they won't tell me if they're available until I have dates. And it's like, unfortunately, you got to just start making the movie, and you got to make a call, and then you got to go from there. And so that's part of the process. And then, you know, for David, Marguerite, for Javier, for everyone, you know, they're available. And you start a sort of like, when we knew that they were available, it's like, oh my God, like, I love David in Primer, and Marguerite I've seen so Wet Hot American Summer and Mighty Ducks and all these other films. And I was like, this would be amazing. And the casting process is always interesting, whether you're doing it where you're dealing with agents, like, and we're moving with like movie star sort of people, or you're just having auditions, because we also auditioned roles for this film. It's a really interesting process, because up until that point, the entire thing has just been either in your mind or on your page. And then someone comes in, you know, and there's actors and actresses who came in and auditioned who did not get the parts. But the thing that's weird about it is like, things that they did in that audition made it to me. And I was like, oh, I really loved that. And then I took that, and then that informed the performance for a different actor, which is so weird, but it's like part of the iterative sort of intuitive process of filmmaking.
Absolutely. I mean, different creatives bring different flavors, don't they? And there's something to learn from everybody, whether you get it or not. Obviously, being a little bit biased myself because I'm an actor as well, but there are quite a few actors, obviously, but hopefully more than a few, that watch our channel as well. And they would want to know if you have any casting advice for them,
It's almost a similar version of what I said before about filmmakers asking for money. It's like you're coming into the room. This is tricky because not everyone works the same way. If I'm in a room and I'm auditioning actors, it's my best interest for you to do the best work you possibly can in front of me. Like, I want to see your best thing. And so that might mean, like, if you need a couple minutes, then that's fine. I think it's like partly like some of the stuff that I think actors, either it's self-destruction or it's just because, like, to act, you also have to be doing most of the time, like, working multiple jobs and how to get away to make the audition. Like, it's tricky. So it's like, if you can, just making sure you protect that audition space. So you get there early, so you're not all sweaty, and like you can take a minute, use the restroom if you have to, and if it's a situation where you don't need to be off book, but you're trying to be off book, like it's an audition, like you can be on book, like it's okay, unless it's explicitly like must be off book. I think that's the other thing of like the rules that the auditors have set, like you just got to follow those rules. Like it's like hyper risky to come in there and be like, I know you said this thing, but I'm going to do something completely different. And like, you always read that story, but like, and it worked. And it's like, it worked one time out of 7 million. Like, don't do that. Like, because what you're saying in that moment is that like, I don't follow directions, and it's like, no one really wants that.
Yeah. And also kind of partly, I don't like what your idea is maybe as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I always say when I talk to actors there's sort of three things that I think the audition process is about from my point of view as a director. One is, and it's in this order, is it first off, can they act? Which sounds stupid, but that's the thing. And really when I say can they act, it means, can you make a choice? Can you come into the room having made a choice of the material? And when you put it like that, actually, a lot of the times actors don't do that. They can act, they understand what acting is, but they've not made a strong choice about the character. Partly I think they do it is because they're afraid that they're making the wrong choice about the character. And I would take, personally, for me, a wrong, strong choice, because then I'm looking for the second thing, which is, can you take direction? Which is essentially, can you take my choice and make it your own? An actor can come in with a really amazing, strong choice, and I'm like, wow, I like that. Sometimes I'll give someone a really shitty piece of direction that I would never use for the movie, but I just want to see if you're going to be able to take my direction. And if they don't, or what you see a lot of times with actors is they just do the exact same thing again. It's like, well, I'm not casting you, because like I can't work with someone who can't, And then the third thing, which is weirdly like it's the X factor sort of thing. It's like, is there something about this person / can I work with them? I definitely think about this. Filmmaking is long hours, and do I want to spend time with someone who's going to be a nightmare human being? And so part of the audition process is like just having that real quick exchange of like, how is this rapport working? And then, you sort of take that after the fact and sort of put all those things together. So I think that's one thing I think actors might want to know when they're looking at the people sitting on the other side of the table.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's fantastic advice. In terms of, I usually ask this first, but what was your journey into becoming a filmmaker?
I liked movies as a kid, and my parents supported me when I said I wanted to go to film school. And I just is really, there was no, like, I always knew.
Yeah. Not everyone goes to film school, so it's good to hear, what your path was. Which film school did you go to?
I went to a place called Columbia College in Chicago, which was a very good film school when I was there, and much more like on the art film school sort of track.
Fantastic. So what would you say film school maybe didn't prepare you for? What do you wish you'd learned at film school that you didn't?
Here's how I'm going to answer this, and this because it's nothing about Columbia or film school, but I was getting my hair cut by my guy, and he's from South Korea, and his name's Dae, and I was like, how did you get into hair cutting? Which is like, and his parents were hair cutters, but then he also went to hairdresser school, and he said this thing which I thought was really interesting, because he's speaking purely from his own experience, which is like, he's like, hair cutting school, it teaches you how to like, it doesn't actually teach you how to cut hair or do any of the stuff about cutting hair. It gets you in the position so that when you get into the real world, you can cut hair. Like,
right, okay.
And that's film school. It's like, it gives you all of the base things that you need to do, or art school in general, but like, just because you've done the school thing, like you are now at the spot now at that moment upon graduation, you can start trying to actually cut hair or make films or whatever. And so I think a lot of times people go to film school and like, oh, I didn't learn how to do this. I didn't know how to make a resume, or I didn't know how to raise money. And it's like part of what film school and art school is about is like finding your voice, finding a way to understand the craft. I mean, it's all the things that you sort of need to know before you can actually start even remotely coming close to doing it.
If you had like any final pieces of advice in terms of filmmakers dealing with rejection, what would it be?
Well, that's one reason why filmmakers need to be a little bit more caring towards actors, because actors, your job as an actor is not to act. It's your job is to go to auditions and get told no, basically. Like that's what makes it a job. I'm expecting that you're going to learn your lines and you have mechanisms to how to learn lines, and you've learned through either Stanislavski or Meisner or whatever your technique is, you've been able to figure out how to access that character. I don't care how you do it. That's you. That the job part is like showing up on time and basically getting no told to you constantly, and then you still keep doing it. And that's a bit like filmmaking too. I mean, whether you're going out for money or you're going to film festivals or you're doing all that stuff. I mean, you know, there's like a Kubrick quote that it's like the most terrifying thing isn't that the universe is out to get you, it's that it doesn't care. And it's like, that's dark if you want to get dark there real quick. And like as artists and filmmakers, like no one is asking for us to make the next thing. Like no one, and that's sometimes we all feel like that's why you get out of bed, because someone's got to hear what I got to say. And I think you got to find like, why are you telling this story, or why are you doing this thing? And if you can try to find that answer, maybe you go to film school to help you find that answer of like, what am I doing and how am I doing it? Like film school for me unlocked, I didn't make a decent film, even close to a decent film at film school, but I unlocked like, how do I access material from me to like turn it into a movie? And that was huge. And then it's also understanding like, what do you enjoy about the process? And I think for filmmaking, for me, it's a very product oriented world that we live in. It's like you and me are only talking now because I've made monuments. You and me are not talking because I'm making monuments. Like you and I didn't chat 6 months ago or a year ago. No, we talk, and that's it. It pushes the conversation towards product oriented sort of way. When in actual fact, that in my experience, most filmmakers, me personally, it's about the process, and the process has a lot to do with either the discovery process of making the film or really the collaboration with those other people that you're with. And so I think that would be something I would maybe put to younger filmmakers who are trying to deal with it. You know, if you find yourself in a position where you are making work and people are getting a chance to see it, it's not really up to you once you make something what they think about it. I mean, it's not yours anymore. You give it away. And people, you know, I read reviews for monuments and I'm like, you know, in a negative review, and I'm like, this person, there's nothing to do with my movie. This, like, I don't know, you know, but it's okay. Like, that's what they got from it. And that's the point of making art. Like, we make it, you experience it, but it's not yours anymore. And so, but the thing that's weird about it is that, you know, success is dictated on like how good or whatever it is. And you don't get to control that. What you can control is how you interact with other people, you know, the stories you choose to tell, all that stuff. And so I would say maybe in summation, what I would tell the younger filmmakers is like, just focus on the things you can control, which is your stories, who you choose to collaborate with, how you choose to interact with people, ideally being a good person to work with, all of that stuff.
Fantastic. And finally, could you just let our audience know where they can see your work and where they can follow you, you know, if you're on social media and things like that, if there's somewhere that people can support your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much across the board, it's all my name, Jack C. Newell, JackCNewell, on Instagram, which is what I probably do most of. I also have a website, which is the same name. And Monuments is now available on Amazon Prime and iTunes and a couple other VOD services. But you can all get that via my website or my Instagram.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks for making the time. Good to talk with you.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you.